Welcome to this installment of Creative Cabin Fever. On today's episode, I have one of the Waterford Massive. Funnily enough, I have never met her in real life. I do actually have loads of friends in common with this adorable person, but I have never met her. I met her through music. She randomly came up on my Instagram and I was like, what's this? Placebo. And I love the imagery surrounding the EP and everything about it. And loads of my friends were sharing it and there was a buzz about it. I listened to it. I was like, okay, who is this person? Fell in love with it, listened to it constantly, did a review about it recently, really love it. I'm actually awaiting a t-shirt that's limited edition, had hoped to wear it today, but it hasn't arrived yet. And that's just the way the universe planned it. It will be an Easter egg on a future interview. But enough about me and my weirdness. Carrie, welcome.
What a flipping intro. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much. Is this an awkward or non-awkward time to let's discuss our mutual friends?
Let's discuss our mutual friends.
I haven't even checked, to be fair. You just make that assumption, isn't it? When like two people are from Waterford, you're like, oh, we probably know the same people or whatever. But to be fair, I think WLR have been hammering my music so much that actually a lot of people have been getting in touch that I don't actually know. So that's quite nice as well. So you never know. Maybe we're just two meandering rivers coming together.
Yeah, it's bizarre how often that happens. Like in my lifetime, I've met two people randomly after like 34 years of living parallel lives, let's say. And we'd never met before. And we continue to have parallel lives, but just, it's weird.
Yeah, Waterford's a small but big place, I think. Sometimes even like, I remember many years ago, like I was abroad at some stage and someone said they were from Waterford and I was like, what? And you just turn into the most Waterford version of yourself, don't you, when you meet other Waterford people abroad. But yeah.
You can certainly take the girl out of Waterford, but it's really hard to get the Waterford out of the girl. Like my accent is something hard. I'm like,
yeah, it's challenging. I read recently in like a print interview that I did, but I was on the phone, but then they printed it afterwards, and they said something about my accent not going anywhere, and I was like, really? Because like when I come home or if I'm talking to like people from home, they're like, oh God, you sound so British today. Like, what's up with you? You know. So I thought that was quite interesting because the girls from Dublin. So I think that was quite, maybe it was because I was talking to her, I went like super Irish on the phone. But then the same day I had another phone interview, and that article said that I had a hybrid Irish and English accent. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Maybe I altered myself for one of them, I don't know.
Well, that actually happens with me. Loads of people think I'm full of shit or pretending. But because I speak 5 languages, automatically, depending who I'm with, my voice and accent alters. It's because I'm so used to mimicking people around me. So like, even if when I was younger, I'd be talking to Spanish exchange students and out of nowhere, I'd have a twang of a Spanish exchange accent on me and they'd think I was taking the piss out of them. But actually...
You speak 5 languages? That's pretty incredible.
Thank you.
Stop that in the conversation, like, just casual. That's so impressive.
I grew up in Switzerland. Most people speak at least 5, so it doesn't seem impressive to me. But yeah, I guess in Ireland it's an unusual one.
Yeah, definitely.
So yes, 5 languages. Any special skills yourself?
I don't know. That's a hard one, isn't it, to answer off the cuff? I don't know what constitutes a special as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing off the top of my head that I would whip out at a party at like 2 a.m. I don't think, you know what I mean? I don't speak fluent Irish or anything like that.
I don't speak Irish. It's not one of my languages. There we are.
Is it not? I'd love to be fair, but like it's pretty impossible to try and do that thing because conversation is like the number one way to learn, right? Well, I don't know, you tell me, like just talking to people in the language, but the odds of you finding someone outside of like, I don't know, maybe the West or Kerry, like it's quite slim, isn't it? To have like a full-blown conversation in Gaelic.
Yeah, the way Irish is taught in schools is very kind of illogical in my book. You're right. Immersion is incredibly important with regards to how we actually retain languages. So like, for instance, one of the ways I learned a language, this is so flipping weird. Like I'm a quarter Italian, right? And when I was a kid, I was told by one of the family relatives who was just being a bit weird that I'd never learn Italian, right? So it stayed in my head. It was like this weird bug in the back of my brain. I was like, okay, I'll never be able to learn Italian. And at this point, I knew French, English, German, right? And I was like, okay, I'll never be able to learn Italian, right? I'm 24 years old. I'm working in Waterford in a pizzeria. The owners aren't bothered to learn English. I have no choice but to learn Italian. And that is the story of how I learned Italian.
Oh my God. Wow. That's an incredible story.
But it was
Right
that,
here in your own doorstep.
it was just that simple. It's like you just,
Wow.
yeah. And even what's this is like, you know, you get these ideas, these patterns in your brain. And I mean, that's a lot of the subject matter of what you talk about. So maybe it
Mm.
is where the conversation's meant to go, you know, and you just get these ideas and actually shifting those patterns or shedding those preconceived notions about ourselves and those traumas or those whatever it is that causes you to believe a certain amount of yourself, or listen to those voices and listen to the mind. It's amazing what you can accomplish. Like,
Oh yeah, it's definitely so interesting. It just popped into my head there of like, I have a thing in my head of, "Oh, I'm just not good at languages," because I did German in school, and I just have this vague memory of just constantly being like, ugh, I just couldn't concentrate on it. So I think I've written off languages as a result, but I'm sure if I really focused on it and created a new belief in my head, I'm sure I'd be fine. My guitarist and dear friend who produced a lot of my work is actually Swiss as well. And he obviously speaks French, and I work together a lot. I could absolutely do my sessions in French and try, but I'm like, no, I can't. I need to concentrate, So I think it's just where you place priorities and beliefs about what you want to learn, isn't it?
hey, look, one thing at a time. You'll get to languages, you know, whenever you feel like
Yeah.
getting to
I
languages.
think it might be like a retirement sort of thing.
Working hard enough, girl. We need the coffee in us.
Yeah,
You know
I
what
know.
I mean? I've been really enjoying your live streams. I only caught two of them. I think it was the hot press one, and I can't remember the other one. I'm going to be honest with you, and I didn't catch all of them because I try be
Yeah.
everywhere. I'm basically a Facebook stalker these days. Like, I'm just catching all these like gigs, going, "Oh yeah, that person's good. Oh, that person's only okay."
Mm. It's so funny that your online diary or like schedule or whatever can actually become busier than like real life or like in person stuff. I have found that definitely, especially with trying to watch Instagram lives. For me, are just like, because they pop up, right? Like, I don't have Facebook on my phone, so I have to actually log in to go and watch people on live. Whereas Instagram, you flick the app and you have like 20 notifications, like, and I'm like, how do you pick? I want to watch that person. I said I end up jumping between 2 to 3 people that I want to watch. Or, that's both the joy and the curse of it, I think, right?
Yeah, and as a performer, how have you been finding doing the lives yourself? Like, what would you say is kind of like? Obviously, I know what the main differences are, but like the pros and cons from your point of view.
Um, how do I say this without sounding negative? Um, it was fun with hindsight. I think I remember the first one very, very vividly, just because I was like, oh God. I'm just not a fan of being online, really. In a, I suppose, in a everyday capacity, I like jumping on there to connect with people, and there is definite pros from it. But I just the the capacity in which it comes of like, every hour I'm on the phone, or just the talking to the screen thing, I really haven't got over that yet. And I guess I find it challenging rather than not enjoying it. I'm sure if I found a route into really enjoying social media, I'd be on there a lot more. So the gigs for me like were a big hurdle, and the hot press one was the first one that I did. Purely because I'm a big fan of hot press, and they've really supported me since I started releasing music. And I was like, oh hell yeah, like I'm up for doing that for sure. And um it was really beneficial for me because it's out of my comfort zone. For some people, gigging live is out of their comfort zone, and they really, really get borderline nausea before they go on. For me, it's like when I have to get on a screen, I'm like, oh, okay, I can't breathe, So it's definitely outside my comfort zone. But it was super beneficial. Anything I did online was, because it brought more listeners and fans and people to connect to, industry, non-industry, and different countries as well, which is pretty cool. You know, when it's a bit weird when you ask questions in the middle of your online gig and like people are just typing back. It's bizarre, but at the same time, it's, you see all these countries popping up and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool, you know. So I enjoyed it when I look back on it, but at the time I was like, oh man, someone give me a big stiff drink right now.
Yeah, no, I understand it. Like, obviously, artists needs to perform. Do you know what I mean? And they need platforms, like whatever the shape of the platform is, where they can discuss and showcase their magic, which is kind of what I try to do. But like, it's also like so freaking weird, like staring at a computer all day. Like for me as well, it's been great because I've like been able to contact people in different countries and stuff, and like the reach is bigger as well. I'm a big hit in Michigan. Like,
Oh, amazing. That's cool.
things.
It's funny, isn't it, when you look at territories of like where people are listening or tuning in from, and you're like, whoa, there's like a big bundle of people listening there. That's bizarre.
Yeah, it's weird. It's so
Mm.
strange. Like, obviously, outside of you doing the live performances online, we've obviously all been in lockdown, and that's starting to ease off. And we're very hopeful that everything's going to keep going that way. But have you discovered any new things about yourself, or done any inner work, or anything that you wanted, like new hobbies or anything? Because obviously, your piece of work talks about inner work a lot. So I'm really interested
Mm.
in what you're doing. And I do follow your Instagram quite closely, and I find you very fascinating. So I'd like to hear more about.
Ah, cheers, girl. um, yes is the answer to all of that, I guess. It's been a very introspective time for me. I think when we first went into lockdown, like anyone, you sort of go into survival mode where you're like, okay, my job's gone. Where am I going to have some money? Like, is this going to last 3 weeks? I was quite hopeful at the start. I was like frantically cleaning my flat because I thought I was actually going to run out of time. I thought, honestly, okay, I'm going to have the month. I was like fixing things and doing stuff that I've been meaning to for like the last 5 years. And then when you start to kind of realize, oh gosh, like we're in this for, we don't know, like when the end date is a question mark. That's when I really started to ease into just stuff started coming up, mate, to be honest with you. Like, priorities was a big one for me. I had a slap in the face of like what I was prioritizing in my life and who I was prioritizing, and most of it is obviously for other people and just forgetting to do the work that was most important for myself. I actually was at a meeting the other day and we were discussing the same question about things we had learned through lockdown and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to be completely honest, folks. Like, it's not one or two things for me, and they're not surface level either. I feel like a whole different person coming out of lockdown, to be honest. I've learned a lot about myself, especially in close proximity, living with someone else that you think you're going to kill them. And then it ends up being just really flip on the other side, blissfulness and just learning to, I guess I thought a lot of things were going to be very negative, and I think working through those and coming out the other side of it was a big one for me. I started brushing up on stuff that I should be doing, like music production. I tried to pick up the guitar a few times. I started learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I started cementing in my morning routine, because you win the morning and you win the day. Just getting up the same time every single day, journaling the minute I get up, meditation most days, things like that, and just getting ready at like 6 nearly every day of lockdown. I know people are going to be like, "Wow, you crazy," but for me, I find some sort of magic in the morning that I just can't replicate anywhere else in the day. So yeah, that's a lot. Like I did a lot in the last couple of months. But perfect time to explore. Hey.
Absolutely. It's the perfect time for you to get yourself into a routine that's going to serve you the rest of your days.
Mm.
And then to figure out what's actually important for you and how you want to live the rest of your life. We're never going to get like something like this, hopefully ever again. So let's make the best of it. You know, I'm an early bird too, and I'm mad into the journals, you know, for all the questions and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful, especially in the morning. so powerful what comes out of the page. And if people often ask me about it, like, how do you just think about things to write about that hour? And I was like, okay, but that's the point. You don't think.
Just
You
right.
get up and your brain, your conscious brain doesn't have time to kick in. So really what you're writing is going to reveal quite a lot of deeper thoughts that are sort of buried in the subconscious or dream state mind. So when they come out on the page, sometimes I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Who knew you could write 3 pages about food? Sometimes it's just ridiculous what comes out. So it's quite revealing, and I think it's kind of like a morning just dump onto the page, for want of a better word. You know, sometimes I'm just spieling about absolutely nothing, and then other times I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize that was impacting me, you know.
Yeah, and that is really interesting because, like you said, your mind doesn't really have time to wake up, so the ego is not really in play yet. So it's kind of like your innermost thoughts sometimes, or sometimes it's general garbage. But
Mm,
whatever comes out it obviously needs to come out. It's kind of like a lucid dream state with a pen, like
yeah,
for all intents and
yeah, for
purposes.
sure. It's definitely a habit though, you know. I think it's like anything. It's like working out. You know, people go to the gym if they want to get fit or increase muscle size or whatever. But really, to flex that muscle, you just need to keep doing it. It's like anything, really. Because I know, like a lot of my friends are like, "How the hell are you?" Because I did a post recently about how many journals I have since I'm like 7, and they're like, "How on earth have you just kept that going?" And I'm like, "It is what it is. It's a habit, you know, and it takes discipline." And some mornings I actually don't want to write anything, and I'll just sit there staring at the page, and maybe I'll do 2 sentences, and I'm like, right, I'm done. I've had enough now. So I think it just takes discipline to sit down, and it doesn't end. And it doesn't work for everyone, I don't think. You know, I think it has the ability to, but again, it's all up here, isn't it? Really, on what you're looking for from it. I think.
Yeah, we all have our own journeys to take, and we're all very individualistic in who we are. And that's kind of the whole point of us all being on the earth together, I think, for our journey. So,
Mm,
like, obviously, we can't all have the same fit all solution, but
yeah.
I enjoy journaling too. So I think you're on a good buzz. With regards to placebo, like, I can't stop talking about it or playing it or telling people how good it
Oh,
is. And I genuinely mean that. And like, you saw my review and we talked about that, but I'm really curious, how does it feel like to release something so deep and, like, I guess, like, you don't know how impactful something's going to be till it's out there, but what's it like after the release? What was the process like to get you to that point? Everything that's in the piece, obviously, and being so raw and just yourself.
so I wrote that project about 2 years ago. So if I had released it back then, I don't think I would have been ready. But whereas I've lived with that piece of work for so long that you get to the point of, all right, come on, people, let's get this out the door now, you know. And I was in a place where I could talk freely and openly about the subject matters, because I think sometimes people listen to music. It just depends on what you get from music, doesn't it? Sometimes people listen to music and they just like a groove and it's a good time, and then other times people really intently hold on to the lyrics, so something catches them off guard. And I just, if anyone had asked me 2 years ago about what that part piece was about, I wouldn't have been able to talk about it. So I was quite happy that I waited, and life presented me with circumstances that didn't allow me to release it until now. So, you know, I had to laugh, to be honest with you, mate. Like when we were like locked down in a global pandemic and my music was scheduled to come out, I was like, okay, universe, I hear you. Okay, fair enough. Because the subject matter is not too dissimilar on a personal level to a global level. It's, I think, obviously the pandemic is what it is scientifically, but really when everyone is locked up, and introspectiveness and being inward and being cut off from every single distraction in your life, you don't have an option but to face yourself. And in a broader scheme of things, that is really what the project was about. So I started laughing. Like, me and my manager were on a phone call and I was like, is this actually for real? Because obviously a release schedule goes, we had that like maybe, I want to say a year in advance, maybe 9 months in advance. We had the date booked and kind of everything was leading up to that. So when it actually happened, I was like, there's no way I could have planned this, even if I wanted to come out in the middle of a global pandemic, you know. So there was a lot of pivoting, a lot of re-navigating, learning from scratch, because obviously none of us have ever been through this before, let alone the music industry. So it was interesting. There was ups and downs, backwards and forwards, breakdowns and breakthroughs. But overall, I'm quite happy I stuck to the date just to stick it out, because I was going to pull it at one stage. Um, and then I just thought, well, really, a friend just, something a friend said to me, I was like, yeah, you're right, actually. You know, there's no point in pausing or going backwards, because you're not actually achieving anything. You just put it out, and maybe that will allow other people to move through. It doesn't necessarily mean that it allows you to move forward, but maybe someone else will come along with the tide of your music, you know. So I don't even know, girl, if it's the right choice to put it out at that time. I don't think you'll ever know, you know, but I made the decision. So
To be honest with you, personally, on my own level, since lockdown happened, I'm losing myself to music on a much more deeper level, because I'm able to immerse myself fully in it. So I am taking into account everyone's lyrical journeys and the messages. I'm no longer kind of fooled by bands who put out music that they think we want to hear. I can hear the depth of the soul. Like, I can tell you when I'm listening to a song where that came from, just by a feeling. Like, I don't even need to understand what's going on. I can just feel it. That's how I
yeah,
approach music. That's how I've always done it. I'm never without my headphones. Personally, like, your piece of work, it's really impactful, and I view it differently than you, but I can feel what you're doing. So I'd imagine there is probably a million other people out there that are currently able to immerse themselves in music for the first time and be in touch quite deeply by your music. So it was the perfect time, Carrie.
mm. That's awesome that you recognize that within yourself, though, you know, because sometimes people feel something about the song and they just don't know what it is. So it's really cool that you're like aware of how you listen to music. I think, you know, what really caught me was the business side of things. Um, because I lacked the face-to-face interaction with my manager. Well, yeah, okay, like we had online calls or whatever, but like it's just different from feeling someone's energy and knowing that they're there and they're handling it. Of course he was handling it, but it's just very different, and I really missed that. So I got very much caught up in like statistics, numbers, the business side of the industry. And also I learned a lot from how people are listening in different countries, because right now in London there's a little bit of a dip. Well, there was, because theoretically people weren't commuting to work, so they weren't on Spotify. Basically that was the ideal behind it. Whereas, like you said, like a lot of people back home were like, oh, I sat down and listened to the whole thing from start to finish, kind of thing. So that was really particularly interesting. I don't really think there was too much of a dip in London. I think a lot of people were still reaching out to me, but I mean, you can't ignore numbers when Spotify start publishing things, and you're like, okay, fair enough. Maybe there was a couple of thousand people not listening to their Discover Weekly, or you know, when the algorithm pushes music towards you or whatever. So, and I also feel like radio had a real moment as well, and it still is having a bit of a moment. Just because I think people now are really coming back to the company of a voice and someone actually interacting with them in their homes, rather than, you know, just being pushed song after song after song after song. I know for one, I've been using the radio a lot more since lockdown. So I'm really appreciative of all the DJs playing my stuff at the minute, because I do think that overtook streaming for a little while, March, April, definitely, and still now, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. It's true. People are missing conversation, and they are missing like people's voices. And so Spotify would be taking a backseat to radio at the moment, which is probably a strange turn of events for everyone involved, and a beautiful one. And
Mm.
then obviously the other point is you are being played on the radio a lot. And obviously a lot of conversation is being had at the moment about being a woman getting played on the radio. Um, I like to talk about being a woman in the music industry in general. Like, what's your feedback? Like, how do you feel? What's your experience?
It's quite a big topic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I find this one difficult to answer purely because, yes, I have been writing music pretty much forever or whatever. But like being in this industry, like it's like anything, like you encapsulate it into a group of people and a group of structures and how things are run. Like in that bubble, I haven't really been in it only since October, since I started releasing music. So I think when you're outside of the industry bubble, I don't really feel the impact, or I'm not sure I paid enough attention through my own, nobody's fault but my own, to the disparity of women and men, especially in on Irish radio. But again, like when the numbers come out, I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. It's not that I was oblivious to it, but I definitely didn't feel the impact just because I wasn't releasing music, you know. And in the UK, like I've been here 11 years now, and I'm pretty sure like they're subject to a certain percentage of they have to play a certain amount of UK artists, and quite a lot of the female UK artists are doing extremely well. Like they're so powerful over here. So like when the numbers came out in Ireland, I was a bit like, oh. um, I think in terms of women in the music industry, I definitely have noticed the lack of representation in production, especially, um, or musicians, presenters, people in jobs like that. You know, like most sessions I go to will be with a male. Um, and don't get me wrong, they're all fabulous and they're fantastic and they're incredible at what they do. And especially the people that I pick to play in my band, musicians as well. Like I rarely come across like female musicians reaching out to say, oh hey, like if you need a guitarist or whatever, like hit me up. If I go and write with another female artist, generally um we will maybe work on something that a man has produced, or you know. So I think I know the ins and outs over here in terms of like there's a lot of funding available now to really start to push women into production and into key roles in the industry, which is so awesome. I'm not sure what the situation is in Ireland with things like that, but I think it's all going in the right direction. You know, I um, thankfully haven't experienced any too much disparity or negativity as a woman in the industry. But I do think that globally, we're moving from like a real masculine energy into a feminine energy. And whether you're interested in that sort of thing or not, I think the world is seeing a lot more nurturing, listening, creativity, people starting to break out of norms, people starting to do their own thing on their own terms rather than being under authority, which is masculine energy. And I think as a result, we're going to see a lot more female artists, and just in any capacity, not just singers, like painters, whatever, any sort of art, which is awesome. So I'm looking forward to this path continuing, I guess, you know. um I feel maybe the only thing that has sort of impacted, or the thing that I notice most, is like beauty standards in being a female in the industry. I feel the pressure of that more than I do being a female, if that makes sense. I think like female beauty standards across the music industry in comparison to how males are presented, that's a huge disparity, which really bugs me and gets under my skin. Um, so that I have noticed a lot more and been sort of swimming in that pond, if you will.
Yeah, no one's ever mentioned that before, but I was thinking about that the other day. Like, there's a few things there. Like, obviously, I do believe that there are just genuinely less women in the industry than there are men. Like,
Yeah, I do think so.
so that's going to affect the stats. Like, and I want that to be, you know, like you can't have as many women being played on the radio as men if there's not as many women as men on the radio. Do you know? Like, good quality music is good quality music. Like, if I was to be choosing playlists or whatever, I wouldn't take into account whether you're male or female. If it's good, it gets played. If it's not, it's not. So if there's less of us, and it's much harder for me, for instance, it's much harder to be taken seriously because I'm a woman, right? The majority of men in the industry be like, oh, she's only into music because some lad told her about a band years ago and now she's really into songs. So like, you know, because I'm a woman, I can't possibly be passionate about music. Like it has to be something that was given onto me. I find that very hard. But yeah, the way you look, like a guy can look like anything and be taken seriously, but for a woman, they have to have a certain appearance. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
part of our, I don't know, it's kind of what's leveled on us from birth. You know, you'll
Mm-hmm.
do, it doesn't really matter like how smart you are once you're pretty.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think I became more aware of it because when I started having to, I say having to upload images, promo, showing up for things, yada yada yada. I think it's more so to do with the music, but it became a sort of image thing for me then, where people were like, "Oh, you're so raw. You're just kind of like, forgive the phrase, but fuck it. Like you're just like whatever. I don't give a fuck." And I was like, "Well, I don't really, to be honest with you. Like, I just don't. I'll do what I want with my music. I will have the sound that I want, and I will put the pictures up that I want. You know." And it surprised me how refreshing people found that still in this kind of year. And I just think there is an underrepresentation of that. I find even people that I'm not inspired by, but people I listen to, or people I'm told, oh, this is the next big thing or whatever, and I'm like, ugh, whatever. Like, look at all the perfectly preened images, and like she's stunningly beautiful. Like, okay, the music's maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but I'm just like, I'm just so bored of like seeing societal ideals of perfection and beauty. And I just think when people came to me with that sort of like, oh wow, you're really interesting, you sound like you look, and you look like you sound, I thought that was a really big thing for me. And I was like, oh well, okay, I'm gonna latch onto that, and I'm gonna just gonna keep moving forward with it, um because if people can relate to it, I think, well then, all the more better. If your music is growing popular and you're starting to hit the masses and you have an image that people relate to, great.
Yeah, just be yourself. Everyone else is taken. And like
Hmm.
obviously your voice is incredible, and it's so gruff and different, and like the way you're able to put words together, obviously that probably was helped by the fact that you've been journaling since you're 7. But your voice itself, how did you find that, Carrie? Because that really interests me.
$1 million question. I don't know. I really don't know. I've actually been, you would laugh how many times I've Googled, where does a tone of voice come from? Like, it mesmerizes me, actually, if I'm honest, because when I was studying music, a question that we had was, oh, we had to talk about like the artists that we loved or whatever. And my teacher said, that's interesting, Carrie. You don't really like anyone unless they have space for the voice in the song. And you like most people who are known for having that voice where you can hear them on the radio and know who they are, that sort of way. And I was like, yeah, well, yeah, that's true, actually. When you say something out loud and you realize it for the first time. Um, so I have been fascinated by tones of voices, I think, since I started listening to music. I just haven't realized. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of what you've listened to and what you've been through. I think energy and experiences manifest in the body. We all know that, hopefully. And, I think I do believe that they can not get stuck, but they can shape your vocal cords and the way in which your body works and mechanisms in the body. And I think that teamed with stuff that you've listened to, because you ultimately, the stuff that you listen to, you probably would have sang, and then those vowels get shaped in your mouth. So over a period of time, I think the resonance and then the shape that you are actually putting together, um, maybe that kind of gives the sounds that people hear, I guess. That's just my sort of
No, I really, really
figuring out
like
of it.
I really like that explanation, and I love that kind of view on it. Like I also believe that we are everything we experience. So that works for me.
Mm.
What was the first song you fell in love with? I ask this at every single interview because I think it's your gateway drug into the rock and roll music industry, but I don't know.
Fleetwood Mac, Dreams. Yeah. It's got to be. I think this comes not that question, but the question, who's your biggest influences, or what did you grow up listening to, comes along a lot, and your brain just goes, oh God, I can't remember everybody's music. But I specifically remember hearing Fleetwood Mac for the first time in my house when I was a kid, and I was like, what is this, and who is Stevie Nicks? So definitely that song. And still, I think it is for a lot of people, when you hear that song, you just feel something that you can't really articulate. And I think for me, that's how I know that I'm sort of in love with a song.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful track. Great choice. Obviously, and it's very, very different to anything else. So it probably makes sense that, yeah, you've always been impacted by people that were not scared to stick out of the box. And that's deadly. And that's exactly where your brand comes from. That's amazing. I love this. I love discovering things about people.
I like discovering it about myself. I think every time I have a conversation with someone, I discover something new. So it's quite hard when interviews go out and I'm like, oh, I forgot something. Because you just discover something new every time, because it's not something I sit there thinking about, to be honest. It's not until someone asks you a really great question do you then discover a really great answer.
Yeah, I'm finding the same. I'm probably learning more about myself in these than I am about anyone
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd love to know what your lockdown jams have been. I see that you share a lot of music on Instagram, and I have been following as much as I can and trying to keep
Yeah.
stuff. Please send me playlists so I can keep a closer eye on your
Yeah.
incredible taste. But who would you recommend right now?
Again, it's one of those questions, isn't it? I'm listening to so much stuff at the minute, just purely because I have a really bad habit of listening to old music quite a lot. I don't really listen to new music that much. Um, so maybe I'll just give you my favorites that I have on repeat. I listen to Jordan Rakei nearly every day, I'd say. He is amazing, kind of in the same vein of what I do. It's kind of like jazz, hip hop, funk, soul kind of thing. Alongside of that, I listen to Tom Misch quite a lot. He's amazing. Trying to think of some ladies. Do you know who I'm digging is April? I believe she might be from Wicklow or Dublin. She's amazing. I really like her stuff. I've only found her recently, actually. Irish artist. The sound coming out of Ireland, BTW, is effing mind blowing. I'm so happy. Finally, we're starting to come around to listening to stuff that is a little bit outside the box, which is amazing. Let's go, Ireland. Um, any other Irish artists I'm listening to? This is the point where you really don't want Spotify to crash it, isn't
Yeah, and it always crashes. Like I pay for
it?
premium, I look after me phone, I'd be in the
Mm,
middle of doing a thing. I'm like, who am I listening to? I can't remember anything. And then the phone crashes and you're just
yeah.
like,
Apparently they had like a global crash yesterday or something like that. Um,
oh,
who else have I been listening to? I found a really cool Irish guy yesterday, actually. Is it Brian? He spells it like Brie Fada N. He's really cool as well. I like him. So
okay.
they're kind of my discoveries in the last sort of week or so. I listened to, oh, do you know Cleo Sol?
No, this is
Listen to
great.
Cleo Sol. Her album is just delicious. It's amazing. I listen to a lot of house music as well, mate, to be fair.
There is nothing wrong with diversity in the world. It takes all sorts. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like I'll have
yeah,
my days where all I want is like French electro. Like I am
yeah,
not ashamed of my past. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I need it. I need house music. I need that. I'm a big fan of like old school piano, Chicago kind of house. So I need that. I just can't live without it. So it's generally a weekend listen that.
Yeah, a bit of a
But
down.
again, I go old though. I go like Kerry Chandler sort of territory. Someone I've only discovered recently is Jada G as well. She's awesome. Another lady killing it. I believe she's Canadian, but she's based in London, and she is that kind of sort of Chicago warehouse sort of feel. So I'm digging her as well. She's great to follow. Follow her on Instagram. You just get such a laugh off her. Her energy is like
I love that. I love when people are just themselves and it comes off so flippin' passionate and
yeah.
energetic and deadly. I only have one more question, then I'm going to let you go. You've been amazing. Do you want to tell me about your favorite gig memories? Because I want to get people a bit buzzed about the future. I mean, the present, but the future.
Other people's gigs?
Other people's gigs is fine with me. Whatever way you take the question is the way you're supposed to answer it.
Let me think. It's one of those ones, isn't it, where you like think of your best gigs. I actually used to work at the O2 Arena, so I've seen a lot of gigs for free, which is amazing. I've seen Beyonce before warming up in a tracksuit, so that's got to rub off on you, right? um, what kind of gigs do I love at the minute? You know what? The guy who produces my Swiss friend, he is in a band called Elevens, and they are really the last gig I went to, but the last one I can remember, like this year, or maybe it was like late last year, that they just blow my mind. They're two producers, but they're like multi-instrumentalists, and they bring on maybe like 8 featuring acts as well. And this was like their first headline gig, which is even more mind-blowing. The place sold out. Like, they haven't really been releasing music for that long, and everyone in the crowd knew the words to the songs. They had like featuring artists all over the stage. They had sax, they had like 5 keyboards, guitarists. It was amazing. And I think those are the kind of gigs that I love more, like intimate things that it blew my mind, I think, more because they were my friends, and I'm like, how did you piece this together with no funding, no record label, no, it's just purely all the musicians were there, and they're world class like musicians. They're just there for the love of the sound, and the audience were just like next level. Like, how do you know all the words to this music? It hasn't even been out that long, and they were like super fans. Like, that's, like they had fallen in love with these two guys so much. They went out of their way to come to this gig, and I think it was like, it wasn't one of their first gigs, but like they hadn't done many, and I just really appreciate stuff like that. And it was a grassroots venue as well, which this venue in particular are always so supportive of grassroots music, which they're obviously now sort of risking going completely out of business, which is really sad. So I urge the people of the country to get out there and support venues like that really help artists who are maybe at the start or at the tipping point of their career to break through. These venues are so important for artists like that, and I think it's important that we go out and pay the £6 or whatever it is to get in, and when we are allowed to go back and do it. So yeah, I'm digging gigs, like supporting my friends at the minute, rather than spending £80 on Kendrick Lamar, which I nearly did because he was meant to play Hyde Park this summer, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll book it next Wednesday, and then they were like, the country's going into lockdown, no more gigs. So saved myself £80. But I'd pay £200 to go see Kendrick Lamar. So I'm not saying that he's not important. FYI.
Look, I try to go to as many local gigs as possible, and I make it a mission of mine to go to one gig in Dublin or Cork every 5 weeks for pleasure, just to see bands, network, get the idea. When I'm there, I don't talk to anyone. When the gig is on, like, I'm like solo thing. I think it's so important. I refuse like any kind of guest pass. I want to pay, like, because how can I expect people to pay to come to my gigs if I'm not supporting back? So to me, it's just the way it is. But yeah, I went to Slipknot in January and it was fucking amazing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You gotta have a bit of mixture of both, don't you? The big, huge gigs, and then the ones where you're like, who are these people?
Yeah, it's so important. I fucking love music.
I can't wait. I can't wait to gig again. I'm so excited. Yeah, you better come up. I've got a gig November 5th in Whelan's in Dub. So fingers crossed that goes ahead, because it'll be really awesome. It'll be my first one back, and I'll have a full band as well, which will be even better. And it'll be my first time playing at home.
Wow. November 5th. Look, I'm actually going to put it in my phone right now, Carrie. I saw the event, but I haven't put it in my phone. I'm going to try book that off in advance. November 5th. Yeah, like it'd be completely pointless not to come see you, because you're actually so talented, and Whelan's is a great venue, and there's going to be a full band there, so that'll just be amazing. And hopefully by then we can even like talk to people face to face and don't have to wear masks. It would be brilliant.
We might even get a cheeky hug in, you never know.
Yeah. My next big thing that I'm looking forward to is August 1st, I'm kind of taking part in an online music festival from one way or another. So we have like a whole day of Irish music online streaming. It's called
Amazing.
Transmission, and it's going to be amazing. So yeah, that's 3 weeks away. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome. I'll check it out.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much for your time. I'll stop recording now.